The man who stared into the void, and what he saw looking back. Is it a real possibility, or just a figment of humanity's imagination? A mere urban legend? Is this rumor ultimately a good thing or a bad thing? Tonight, once again, we'll examine whether it's true or not from a Japanese perspective. Section 1. Hook.I. In 1963, a 21-year-old graduate student at Cambridge University was given 2 years to live. He had just been diagnosed with a rare, progressive motor neuron disease. His muscles would fail him, one by one. His body would become a prison. The doctors were not optimistic. That young man went on to live for 55 more years. He became the most famous scientist on the planet. He wrote a book about the origin of the universe that sold 10 million copies. He appeared on Star Trek, The Simpsons, and the BBC. He held the same academic chair once held by Isaac Newton. And in that time, he said things, warned of things, that even now, years after his death, keeps scientists and philosophers awake at night. He said artificial intelligence could end the human race. He said we need to leave Earth within 100 years or face extinction. He said that if aliens make contact with us, we should not respond. He said he had found evidence, real, mathematical evidence, that time itself may have a beginning and an end. His name was Stephen William Hawking. And the line between what he actually said, what he was misquoted as saying, and what people desperately wanted him to have said, has become one of the strangest and most fascinating puzzles of our age. Tonight, we separate the man from the myth, and what we find is more extraordinary than the legend. Section 2. Introduction. Stephen Hawking occupies a unique position in modern culture. He was a genuine scientific genius, one of the most important theoretical physicists of the 20th century. His contributions to our understanding of black holes, the nature of time, and the origins of the universe are real, rigorous, and lasting. But he was also something rarer than a genius. He was a symbol, the image of a man confined to a wheelchair, speaking through a synthesized voice, and yet somehow reaching further into the cosmos than almost any mind in history. That image lodged itself in the collective imagination of the world in a way that very few scientists ever achieve. And with that symbolic power came something inevitable. Myths, misquotations, urban legends, stories that spread across the internet claiming to reveal what Hawking really said, or really believed, or really warned us about. Some of these legends are exaggerations of things he actually said. Some are outright fabrications attributed to him because his name lends them authority. And some, the most interesting ones, reflect genuine things he said and believed that are so strange, so counterintuitive, so challenging to everything we think we know, that they sound like legends even though they're real. That last category is the one that should concern us most. Section 3. Background. Stephen Hawking was born on January 8, 1942, in Oxford, England, exactly 300 years after the death of Galileo Galilei. He would later note that coincidence with some satisfaction. He was not, by his own account, an exceptional student in his early years. He described himself as lazy and unfocused. His father wanted him to study medicine. Hawking chose mathematics and physics. At Oxford, he was bright but undisciplined, doing, by his own estimate, about 1 hour of work per day and still managing to graduate with honors. He arrived at Cambridge in 1962 to pursue his PhD in cosmology. And then, in the winter of 1962 to 1963, he began to notice something wrong. He was tripping, slurring his speech, losing coordination in ways he couldn't explain. In early 1963, at age 21, he was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, the same disease that would come to be called Lou Gehrig's disease in America. The doctors gave him 2 years. What happened next is, in its own way, as remarkable as anything he ever wrote about the cosmos. Hawking later said that the diagnosis, paradoxically, transformed him. Before, he had been drifting. The disease forced him to focus. It forced him to confront what mattered and to pursue it with an intensity he had never previously possessed. He fell in love with Jane Wilde, who would become his first wife. He threw himself into his research. He began producing work of genuine originality. By the early 1970s, despite progressive physical decline, he was making some of the most significant contributions to theoretical physics of the 20th century. He would live for 55 more years after his diagnosis. He He died on March 14, 2018, Pi Day, at the age of 76. The date, many noted, was also the birthday of Albert Einstein. Section 4. The Complete Story. Chapter 1. The science that changed everything. Before we can understand the legends, we need to understand what Hawking actually did. In 1970, working with mathematician Roger Penrose, Hawking proved that if Einstein's theory of general relativity was correct, then the universe must have begun in a singularity, a point of infinite density and zero volume. The Big Bang was not merely a theory. Under the mathematics of general relativity, it was, Hawking and Penrose showed, essentially inevitable. This was significant. But what came next was seismic. In 1974, Hawking published a paper that shocked the physics community. He had been trying to reconcile two of the great theories of physics, general relativity, which governs the very large, and quantum mechanics, which governs the very small. What he found, at the intersection of those two theories, was something no one had predicted. Black holes, objects so massive that not even light can escape their gravity, were not, in fact, completely black. They emit radiation, faint, thermal radiation, caused by quantum effects at the event horizon, the point of no return around a black hole. This radiation, now called Hawking radiation, means that black holes slowly lose mass over enormous timescales. And ultimately, they evaporate. If Hawking radiation is real, and it has not yet been directly observed, though most physicists believe it must exist, then black holes have a lifespan. They are born, they live, they die. The universe, at the largest scale, operates like a living system. Chapter 2. The warning about AI. Now we enter the territory of legend. In 2014, Hawking gave an interview to the BBC in which he said, and this is a real quote, that the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. The internet exploded. The quote spread everywhere. It was shared millions of times. It was cited in countless articles about the dangers of AI. And it was, in isolation, accurate. He did say it. But here is what the legend leaves out. Hawking did not say AI would inevitably destroy humanity. He was identifying a risk, a potential trajectory that humanity could avoid with careful governance and thoughtful development. He also said, in the same period, that AI was potentially the greatest achievement in human history, that it could eliminate disease and poverty and solve problems that have defeated humanity for millennia. His position was not, AI is evil. His position was, AI is the most powerful tool humanity has ever developed, and powerful tools require careful handling. The nuance got lost in transmission. What traveled around the world was the scary half of a complicated thought. That gap, between what Hawking said and what people heard, reveals something important about how we process warnings from authority figures. We hear what we're afraid of. We amplify what confirms our fears. And we attribute to brilliant people the unambiguous certainty that their actual thinking never contained. Chapter 3. The Alien Warning. One of the most misunderstood statements in modern science. In 2010, Hawking made a statement about extraterrestrial life that ricocheted around the world and has been misquoted ever since. He said that if intelligent alien civilizations exist, attempting to contact them would be a little too risky. He compared it to the Native Americans encountering Christopher Columbus, noting that the encounter didn't turn out very well for the indigenous population. What the headline said, Hawking warns we must never contact aliens. What Hawking actually said, contact could be risky, based on historical precedent of what happens when technologically advanced civilizations encounter less advanced ones. He was not saying aliens are malevolent. He was making a probabilistic argument. Any civilization capable of traveling interstellar distances would be so far ahead of us technologically that the encounter would be, by definition, an asymmetric one. And asymmetric encounters in history have rarely gone well for the less powerful party. This is actually a mainstream position in certain branches of astrobiology. The debate between those who want to actively broadcast signals into space and those who argue for caution is a real scientific controversy, not a fringe one. But the legend version, Hawking said don't talk to aliens because they'll destroy us, flattened a carefully reasoned probabilistic argument into a horror movie premise. The real argument is more interesting and more unsettling. What he actually said. Chapter 4, The 100-Year Warning, and what it actually means. In 2016 and again in 2017, Hawking made headlines with a warning that humanity needed to become a multi-planetary species within 100 years or face extinction. The 100-year figure circulated widely. It was dramatic. It was specific. It suggested a countdown. But here again, the legend diverged from the reality. Hawking was not predicting a specific catastrophe in 100 years. He was making an argument about cumulative risk, the idea that over long enough timescales, an event that has a small annual probability of occurring becomes virtually certain to occur. Asteroid impact, pandemic, nuclear war, climate change. Any one of these, over centuries or millennia, has a non-trivial probability of causing civilizational collapse. A species that exists on only one planet has no backup. A species distributed across multiple worlds is much harder to eliminate entirely. This is not a fringe view. It is shared by many serious scientists and philosophers of existential risk. It has been discussed in peer-reviewed literature at Oxford's Future of Humanity Institute, at Cambridge's Center for the Study of Existential Risk. Hawking was not a prophet delivering a 100-year countdown. He was a physicist applying probability theory to the question of human survival. The difference matters enormously. Because the legend version, Hawking said we have 100 years, encourages passivity or panic. The real argument encourages action. Chapter 5, The Deathbed Revelations That Weren't After Hawking's death in March 2018, a specific category of urban legend exploded online. Posts began circulating claiming that Hawking had made shocking deathbed revelations about God, about aliens, about the nature of reality, that had been suppressed by governments or academic institutions. Hawking's final message revealed the truth about extraterrestrial life. Hawking's last paper proves the universe is a simulation. What Hawking really believed about God, the confession they don't want you to see. Almost none of these claims were accurate. Hawking's final scientific paper, co-authored with Thomas Hertog and submitted just before his death, was a technical paper on cosmology dealing with a mathematical framework for understanding the universe's initial conditions. It was genuinely interesting science. It was not a revelation about aliens or God. Hawking was a lifelong atheist, or more precisely, he described himself as not believing in a personal God, while remaining philosophically open about the deepest questions of existence. This was not a secret. He had said it publicly, repeatedly, throughout his life. The deathbed revelation, legends say more about human psychology than about Hawking. We want great minds to have secret knowledge. We want the final moments of a genius to contain something we don't already know. We want the universe to have revealed itself, at the last moment, to one of the people most qualified to receive the message. The reality that Hawking died as he lived, doing physics, thinking carefully, leaving behind incomplete work that his colleagues are still developing, is somehow not enough. We need the legend. Section 5. Theories. Theory 1. The misquotation mechanism. How legends form. Communication researchers have studied how quotes from public figures transform as they spread. The process is well documented. Complex, nuanced statements get simplified. Qualifications get dropped. The most emotionally resonant fragment survives, stripped of context. With Hawking, this process was amplified by 3 factors. First, he spoke about topics: AI, alien life, the end of the world, that people find inherently dramatic. Second, his physical appearance and synthesized voice gave his statements an oracular quality. He seemed to be delivering pronouncements from somewhere beyond ordinary human experience. Third, his genuine scientific authority meant that attribution to him conferred legitimacy on whatever was being said. A fake Hawking quote spreads faster than a real one from a less famous scientist, because the name itself carries weight. Theory 2. The Cassandra Complex. Why we need prophets. In Greek mythology, Cassandra was given the gift of prophecy and the curse that no one would believe her. Hawking was in some ways the anti-Cassandra, a figure whose warnings were believed, even amplified, often beyond what he actually said. Psychologists who study how societies process existential risk have noted that we tend to project our deepest anxieties onto figures of authority. When we are afraid of technology, of climate change, of contact with the unknown, We seek someone who can name the fear and give it shape. Hawking, by the nature of who he was, became that figure whether he wanted to or not. His actual warnings, carefully probabilistic, thoughtfully nuanced, were transformed into prophecy because prophecy is what we needed them to be. Theory 3. The brave mind narrative. There is a specific kind of legend that attaches to people who have suffered greatly and nonetheless achieved remarkable things. Hawking's physical condition, the progressive paralysis, the dependence on machines to speak, the confinement to a wheelchair for most of his adult life, made him a figure of almost mythological resilience. That narrative, while grounded in real courage, also created a distorting lens. Because we saw him as heroic in his survival, we tended to grant his ideas a moral authority that goes beyond their scientific merit. We felt that someone who had suffered so much and achieved so much must have earned access to truths the rest of us cannot reach. That is not how science works. Ideas are true or false regardless of the personal history of the person who proposes them. But it is how mythology works. And Hawking, despite himself, became mythology. Theory 4. The simulation hypothesis connection. One of the more persistent legends around Hawking involves the simulation hypothesis, the idea, popularized by philosopher Nick Bostrom, that what we experience as reality might be a computational simulation run by a more advanced civilization. Posts regularly circulate claiming that Hawking proved or confirmed the simulation hypothesis. He did not. He engaged with it as a philosophical curiosity, as many serious thinkers do. His work on the nature of physical law, particularly his model of top-down cosmology, in which the laws of physics themselves may be probabilistic rather than fixed, does have some philosophical resonances with ideas about simulated realities. But there is an enormous distance between resonances with and proof of. The simulation hypothesis remains a philosophical thought experiment, not a scientific theory. No prediction it makes has been tested. No evidence supports or refutes it. Attributing to Hawking a confirmation of the hypothesis is another example of our tendency to want the universe's greatest puzzles to have been solved, and to want the solving to have been done by the most famous scientist we can find. Theory 5. The legacy war. Who owns Hawking's meaning? After a figure of Hawking's stature dies, something interesting happens. Different groups, ideological, religious, political, scientific, begin competing to claim his legacy, to assert that he would have agreed with their position, to selectively quote or misquote him in service of arguments he may or may not have endorsed. Atheists claim him. Agnostics claim him. Environmentalists cite his climate warnings. Technologists cite his enthusiasm for AI's potential. Doomsday preppers cite his extinction warnings. All of these groups are selecting the Hawking that fits their prior beliefs. This is not dishonesty, exactly. It is something more human and more complicated. We use the dead to argue with the living. We borrow the authority of genius to win debates that the genius himself might have found oversimplified. The legend of Hawking is, in this sense, not a single legend. It is a collection of mirrors, each reflecting a different version of what we most want the universe, and its most eloquent interpreter, to have meant. Section 6. Deep Analysis. Contradiction 1. The most quoted scientist whose quotes are most often wrong here is the central paradox of Hawking's public legacy. He was, by virtually every measure, one of the most famous and most quoted scientists in the world during the last decades of his life. And yet a significant fraction of the quotes attributed to him online are either misquotations, partial quotations stripped of essential context, or outright fabrications. A 2018 analysis found dozens of widely shared Hawking quotes that could not be traced to any verified source: speeches, books, interviews, or papers. The more famous someone becomes, the more quotes get attributed to them. The more authority their name conveys, the greater the incentive to borrow that authority for ideas they never expressed. Abraham Lincoln and Mark Twain faced the same problem. So does Einstein. But with Hawking, the problem has a specific texture because the topics he is most misquoted about, AI, aliens, the end of the world, God, are exactly the topics people most desperately want authoritative answers on. Contradiction 2. The man who warned about AI used it to speak. There is an irony at the center of Hawking's life that tends to get overlooked in discussions of his AI warnings. the synthesized voice system that allowed him to communicate with the world, that turned his thoughts into words and words into the public statements that made him famous, was, itself, an example of exactly the kind of human-machine integration that AI development is moving toward. Without technology, Hawking would have lost his ability to communicate entirely after 1985, when a tracheotomy left him unable to speak. With it, he produced some of the most significant scientific and popular writing of the late 20th century. His life was, in a very literal sense, extended and enriched by the kind of technological augmentation that AI promises to develop further. When he warned about the dangers of AI, he was not speaking from a position of technophobia. He was speaking as someone who had lived the benefits of human-machine collaboration and who understood, precisely because of that intimate experience, how profound the stakes were. Contradiction 3. The physicist who spoke most clearly about what we don't know. The deepest contradiction in Hawking's public image is this. He is remembered primarily for what he told us. For his pronouncements. For his warnings. For his confident-sounding statements about black holes and AI and alien contact. But if you read his actual work, his papers, his books, his lectures, what strikes you most is how often he emphasized uncertainty. How often he said, "We don't know." How often he revised his own positions. His most famous scientific contribution, Hawking radiation, has never been directly observed. It may not be observable with any technology we currently possess. His 1988 book, A Brief History of Time, one of the best-selling science books in history, ends not with triumphant certainty, but with a question. If we ever achieve a complete theory of the universe, it would be the ultimate triumph of human reason, for then we would know the mind of God. Not a declaration, a conditional, a hope. The man the world remembers as the oracle of cosmology spent most of his career reminding us how little we know. The legend erased the uncertainty. It kept the voice and discarded the doubt. That's Section 7. Modern implications. Stephen Hawking died in 2018. The legends around him are still growing. This matters for reasons that go beyond his personal legacy. We live in an era of information abundance and epistemic crisis. There is more content available to more people than at any point in human history. And simultaneously, our collective ability to distinguish between what is true, what is misrepresented, and what is fabricated appears to be eroding. Hawking's posthumous legend is a case study in this problem. His name is routinely attached to claims he never made. His actual views, nuanced, probabilistic, often explicitly uncertain, are routinely replaced by cleaner, more dramatic versions. And the topics he is most often misquoted about, artificial intelligence, existential risk, the search for extraterrestrial life, are among the most consequential issues humanity will face in the coming century. If public understanding of AI risk is being shaped by a misquoted version of Hawking's views, that is not a trivial problem. Policy gets made on the basis of public understanding. Public understanding gets shaped by what people believe the smartest people believe. The distortion of Hawking's legacy is not just a matter of historical accuracy. It is an active interference in the quality of thinking that humanity brings to its most important decisions. There is also a more personal dimension to consider. Hawking spent his life demonstrating something that no legend can fully capture, that a human mind, even imprisoned in a failing body, even dependent on machines to move and speak and breathe, remains capable of reaching places no previous mind has reached. That is not a legend. That is a fact. And it is more extraordinary than any of the myths that have grown up around it. Section 8. Final question. We have followed Stephen Hawking through his life, his science, his warnings, and the legends that have grown up around all of them. We have seen how a 21-year-old given 2 years to live defied every expectation. How a physicist working through equations in a wheelchair changed how humanity understands the universe. How his carefully considered warnings about AI, alien contact, and human extinction were simplified and amplified into something between prophecy and mythology. We have seen how the misquotation machine works, how complex thinking gets distilled into shareable fragments, how authority gets borrowed for arguments the original thinker never made. And we have seen something else. The legends around Hawking, even the false ones, tell us something true. They tell us that we are afraid, that we sense, collectively, that the decisions humanity makes in the coming decades about artificial intelligence, about our place in the cosmos, about whether we become a multi-planetary species or remain confined to a single fragile world, that these decisions matter in ways that transcend ordinary politics. We feel the weight of these questions, and we reach for the most extraordinary mind we know of to help us carry them. The problem is not that we look to Hawking for guidance. The problem is that we wanted him to have answers he never claimed to have. He was a physicist, not a prophet. He was brilliant, not omniscient. He was brave in the face of his own mortality, but he was not immune to being wrong. He revised his own positions. He changed his mind. He admitted uncertainty. And the most important thing he ever said, more important than any warning about AI, more important than any statement about alien life, may have been this: however difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at. Not a prophecy, not a warning, just a man who had every reason to give up, telling you that you don't have to. So here is the question I want to leave you with tonight. In an age when misinformation spreads faster than truth, when even the most famous scientists are misquoted and mythologized, how do you decide what to actually believe? And what would it mean to take the real Hawking seriously, the uncertain, revising, probabilistic thinker, instead of the legend? Leave your answer in the comments. Your voice is what keeps this channel alive. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a like. See you in the next episode.